When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadabji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 99. The truth about colorism lies between the shades. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Francoise Mbabazi. Francoise is a passionate human rights activist, an international public speaker, and community engagement leader with over 10 years of diverse work experience in the nonprofits and philanthropic community. She excels in relationship building, program development, program management, economic empowerment of women and girls, with special focus on bridging the gap between community and policy with its social justice values through inclusive, participatory, and collective impact approach. Francoise is the co-founder and president of My Skin Global, where she aims for every brown and Black girl to be confident in their own skin. She is committed to economic justice, education equity, and poverty reduction, and the mental well-being of BIPOC youth globally. She has a master's degree in gender studies from Arizona State University, Phoenix, Arizona, and international business bachelor's degree from U.S. International University, Nairobi, Kenya. Well, hello there, Francoise. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Francoise, it is actually really great to have you as a guest on the show today. And I'm really grateful for your willingness to be here and to tell your story. Sometimes I share with guests that I am truly humbled when I get to encounter all the different guests that I have so far. And just like yourself, each of you allow me to tap into your own vulnerabilities and draw on strength and insight and inspiration, which all gets shared into this space. So it's really incredibly important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
I could not agree with you more. None of us can do it alone. And quite honestly, I believe that together we're stronger. And I also believe that the power in women leaders, the power in vulnerability, the power in simply being and willing to use your story to impact change is tremendous. Yeah, such platform as you hold is so critical to getting the message out. So again, the pleasure is mine. I'm
Mm,
really honored and privileged to be here. And the more the story goes out, the more I'm hopeful that maybe, just maybe, it will touch yet another girl, another woman.
right, right. And that's what this podcast is all about, Francoise, right? So, this podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it's directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which typically tends to be, it remains, tucked away. So, what the intention of this platform was meant to do is to serve in a way to break barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So, today, Francoise, my hopeful mission for us together is for both of us to encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And of course, I continue to bring forward a trend, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. Francoise, what immediately strikes you in your mind when you hear this phrase, the mental beauty rethink?
When I hear about that phrase, what pops up in my mind is re examine beauty. What is beautiful mean to you
Mm-hmm.
in every sense of your life?
Mm-hmm.
What space does it hold in your life?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that is could be an episode on its own about
Mm-hmm.
what is beauty. Let's
Mm-hmm.
redefine beauty, or
Mm-hmm.
let's define or let's redefine beauty.
It's so interesting how you were able to hear this phrase and where the emphasis went for you, right? Just the focusing on re-examining beauty. And what does that mean? What does that look like? And being curious about, the importance of teasing it out and understanding that there's the possibility for impact and need for change. So I find that very fascinating. And I also find it fascinating, and I sometimes I share this with guests as well, that there really isn't two people who give me the same response, which I find so lovely, which means that this phrase also allows people the opportunity to think outside the box, to, use their creativity to spark connect their thoughts and their feelings and their experiences, and allows us to collaborate on ideas of how we can interpret things. And that's the thing is that there's so much that we can interpret in the world. So being able to share this in this space, and I feel like I'm the holder of all this information of people's ideas of what this means to them. And I find it fascinating every single time.
I can't agree with you more. I truly find beauty to be one of those most intriguing aspect of life
Mm-hmm.
because we put so much emphasis on beauty. When you unpack beauty, it's not external. Beauty is internal
Mm-hmm.
to me. And so the universal standardization of beauty is misleading to me.
Thank you for sharing that, Francoise, because that just really allows me to see even like, where you're coming from and what your perspective is. So this is fantastic. And on that note, I am ready to dive deep with you today and uncover your untold story. Shall we, Francoise?
Let's do it.
Amazing. All right. So to begin, Francoise, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
It goes like this: from personal to universal, beauty equates to emotional well being, comma, career success, comma, and personal privilege.
Mm-hmm. Can you say that one more time?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
From personal to universal, comma, beauty equates to emotional well being, comma, career success, comma, and personal privilege.
Mm. From personal to universal, Beauty equates to emotional well-being, career success, and personal privilege. All right.
Yes.
This is a very intricate title. So I'm curious about where this title comes from. What does it mean to you?
This really speaks to my journey for my skin global.
Mm.
It speaks to how this work emerged from my own personal experiences within my own family, from me being a girl, from emerging out of a family that is dressed in different skin shades, to really examining beauty looks and looked like in the eyes of society.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked long and hard from various places and different countries and continents that I've been on, I found it to be very universal.
Right.
When you look at beauty, beauty sets the tone, the direction for who you are, who you will become from a personal, professional perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It also, depending on how you perceive beauty to be, it could potentially have tremendous negative impact or implications on your mental well-being. So the emotional well-being that I talk about here is also has been researched, is been written in various books
Mm-hmm.
about how beauty really creates all these connotations, all these words. If you believe to be beautiful, you're confident, you are emotionally stable, your success levels are in your career are high likely,
Mm-hmm.
and you have privileges around any sort of space that you hold and occupy. And so this really encompassed all that I talk about when I speak about my skin global and
Right.
how my story evolved and what really drives me until this day.
Thank you for elaborating on that. So tell us what your untold story is all about. Give us that snapshot. Tell us about the who, the what, the when, the where. What are those themes?
I come from a family of 10, 7 girls and 3 boys. Majority of us are lighter. We have some that are darker skin, and they would grow up just feeling very insecure. My sister grew up feeling very insecure in her own skin.
Mm-hmm.
She felt like she was not beautiful. She felt like she was dark, and exactly what I just described in that headline would be her life, her life about I'm not beautiful. I am ugly. I'll never make it in life. I'll never have a good career. I'll never marry a man of my dreams. What's the point?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can imagine growing up as young as 9, hearing such a story from your own sister,
Right.
looking at you, pointing at you, and saying, "You are beautiful. I'm ugly."
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, the word beauty held a different space in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be beautiful anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also my cousin, who was also of a darker skin color, who would go to the bathroom, take a shower with a rock, scrub her body,
Wow.
and coming out of the bathroom bleeding, wanting to look like my sister Rose, who was of a much lighter skin tone. When you ask her what is going on, you're just fine when you went into the bathroom.
Right.
And she said, "Yeah, I took a shower and I used a rock because I want to look just like Rose, you know?"
Mm-hmm.
But because you're so young and so innocent,
Mm-hmm.
and because you think that life is just as simple as that, you could simply grab a rock and scrub your skin and come out looking like the other
So that was her intention. If I scrub my skin, then it'll become lighter.
And that was, again, really a heart-wrenching kind of moment. And that, to me, goes to tell you that the stories that we hear as young children,
Mm-hmm.
we equate those stories to self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
They both felt less favorable.
Mm-hmm.
The darker skin tone contrasted with the bias, the biased standards of beauty in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I traveled the world. I looked around. This image would never leave my mind. I just kept looking and searching for why someone would go to such a length to scrub her skin with a rock. Like, what could be so important about this light skin? And I went to college. I had the privilege of going to school because I was really passionate about education, and I wanted to live a good life. I wanted to be able to provide guidance to my children, and I never wanted to be conditioned
Mm-hmm.
by poverty.
Sure.
I never wanted to be an educated woman like my mother was. I had a bachelor's in international business, and I went further to achieve my master's in women's studies. And really, the point in doing that, I wanted to be the voice for that girl,
Mm-hmm.
or those girls.
Right.
That had I had that mentor, had I had some place to go, to question, to ask, I could have gone. Had I had that story, had I had somebody who normalized the issue as, yeah, you're black, you're dark, and you're beautiful,
Right.
um, it would have been a different story.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get that. I really didn't.
There was no one there to shed that light for you and your siblings. And it also sounds like that's not how you viewed each other. Like it wasn't something that you
Exactly.
focused on. It doesn't seem like it was
No.
something that was looked at as a difference until it became something, like when you said your sister decided to express how unhappy she was and all of what she didn't want to do and didn't see the point, and your cousin saying that I want to be like Rose, right? So
Yes.
is it at that moment where you actually started to see shades?
You're right. That's when I started to see shades. I had no idea I was lighter or she was darker or there was any difference, period. I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know. We didn't have any kind of categorization
Right.
of what it was and what was not in terms of color. And so, yes, that's when I started understanding what color was. And even then, it wasn't quite clear. My sister was six. My sister was six. Was 6 years old. Yeah, and my cousin was 10.
So your cousin was 10, your sister is 6. They want to look like someone else. They want to be in the lighter skin. That must have been so much of a shell shock for you. And I'm just curious about what was going through your mind, because I mean, I'm sure you must have been grappling with a lot of confusion about like what is happening here. I mean, it must have been a very difficult witnessing to see your cousin bleeding, to see that this is what she thought she had to do, to hear your young baby sister expressing all this
Yeah,
pain and emotional suffering. What was going through your mind?
I was confused.
Mm-hmm.
I was so confused. I was so unhappy with how I could have ended up in a different skin tone than she did. It was not fair. It was not fair to her to
Mm-hmm.
feel that way. And it was not fair to me also. Later, I would think about that. I'm like, why am I feeling so guilty? It's not my fault.
Yeah, you were feeling guilty. Like that.
I
So,
was.
so you were feeling the pain. Like it's almost like the love you had for your sister was so strong. You're like, well, I can't, by being this skin tone, I'm hurting her.
Exactly. And that's when I say, if you told me I was beautiful, I resented you.
Mm.
I
Oh, right.
never, you never saw me again
Mm-hmm.
because I was really anything just,
It's like a trigger for you. Yeah.
it was a trigger.
Yeah.
It was a trigger for me. And I didn't want to hear anything beauty. and I would be selected for modeling stuff. I would be all these things. And each time I thought about that, all I could think about is like, no, I want to go to school. I want to go to school
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like my mind, my brain, I would be so much valuable if I was smarter than being beautiful
Mm.
and betraying my sister. I felt like I had betrayed my sister and my cousin. But then the kicker was really around when I had my own child. You know,
Mm-hmm.
at age 2.5, she would be asked by her little peers if she was Black, why
Mm-hmm.
she was Black,
Right.
and that her skin looked like pee and poop.
Oh my goodness.
And at that point, I felt like, you know what? The signs have been with me all my life, and I had not done anything about it. Um,
Wow.
and all the fight and struggles to gain education, to have access to education that most girls didn't have from where I was coming from,
Mm-hmm.
meant nothing at that point. It's like, are you going to do something about it?
Mm-hmm.
I asked myself.
Mm.
And so it is then that I started intervening and getting in schools and, working with educators to implement multicultural curriculums, to recognize different skin shares, to celebrate diversity. And it was also then that I realized that was not enough, that I had to build tools for Black and Brown kids. Girls particularly have this tremendous feeling of unworthiness,
Mm-hmm.
and boys alike. And I just really did not want to exclude any of them.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to build a tool that they can use to ensure that they are so empowered, that they know who they are,
Mm-hmm.
that they understand the science behind the skin and skin evolution and skin adaptation, that they will never buy into the systemic injustices and societal pressures that impact their sense of identity and self worth. I wanted to make sure that through education, mentorship, and community support and activism can provide a space and a platform whereby different skin tones are celebrated instead of being oppressed and minimized and discriminated against. And I really truly wanted to ensure that the mothers of this world,
Mm-hmm.
particularly those in positions of power, women leaders of the world, can be the voice for change. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that if, only if, this educational tool can be incorporate a mental health perspective that is front and center to this work, would really absolutely go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that mental space, without that ability to be grounded in who you are and to know that you are beautiful just the way you are,
Mm-hmm.
the world becomes smaller.
Right.
You look around and you say, oh my God, look at all these obstacles around me. And if you look hard and you are well grounded, there are no obstacles. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are born in poverty, if you're if you're disadvantaged in any kind of way, whether you're a girl that just don't have access to education, just because you're born a girl, or you are a minority, meaning Black or brown or indigenous people who
Mm-hmm.
are perceived to be different because of societal conditioning, if we don't equip our children with who they are as a people and strengthen that mental well-being, we're leaving them up, we're setting them up for failure.
That's the piece that's so important, right? Is to be able to protect mental well-being. And also, and that's very much the message of what I've been talking about for a long time, where physical health and mental health are often seen in silos, but they really do work hand in hand. And while colorism is not necessarily a physical health piece, but there is that physicality in appearance, right? It's all intertwined. All the aspects are intertwined, and one does affect the other, and the other affects the one. So
Yes.
to be dealing with them separately and in different categories, it doesn't do you as much justice. So I totally hear what you're saying about, we want to have these young people have the best chance. And the best chance means to be able to serve them from a place where not only do they feel wonderful, feel confident, but that mental well-being is solid, that they have that grounding within them. So I am now curious, going back to what you shared about your sister and your cousin and you being really confused when at age 9 yourself, you had so much to kind of take in. What sort of actions did you take once you started, even if you were confused and didn't understand everything? Because I'm sure you were so impacted. And like you said, you didn't like to be called beautiful. You were already feeling guilty that you were in the skin tone that your sister preferred. What showed up for you? How did you handle it? What were you able to console your sister and your cousin? What happened?
I remember it like it was yesterday and it's been many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But what I remember to be true is that at that time, I started not only feeling guilty, but also I would look at my mom and feel like, why couldn't you tell her she's beautiful? I would look at my sisters and I'll say, please tell my sister she's beautiful. And they're like, yeah, of course she is. Like, she's going to get over it, you know?
Right.
No one took it seriously. For me, somehow, some way, it became an issue of what I could resonate with at the time were two things.
Mm-hmm.
We come from humble beginnings. My mother, like I said, was not educated. She got married when she was 15 and she started having kids when she was 16.
Mm-hmm.
Girls were not prioritized for education
Mm-hmm.
at the time within my family, really
Right.
my dad. And so what stood out for me at the time was if we were born in a wealthy or better off family,
Mm-hmm.
my sister would not be feeling this way. She would she
Right.
would find who she is. She would go to school. She would have a good life because she'll have a reference point. Somehow I was able to see that.
So there was this externalized anger, like an externalized anger of like, if this happened, then this would have been the result instead.
Exactly. And then I would channel that to my mother in a way like, how could you do this to us?
Mm-hmm.
How could you give birth to us
Mm-hmm.
when you knew like you couldn't take care of us?
Mm-hmm.
And then the trauma of looking at her, my mom is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at her being just abused and not having to pick up the bags and leave us
Mm-hmm.
because she was held back by us. She couldn't leave her children behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was like the only thing that I had to do was to dream big.
Mm-hmm.
I was not going to be conditioned by where I was born and raised. I was going to go to school at any cost.
Mm-hmm.
At any cost. I would not think like my sister because if she only knew better,
Mm-hmm.
she would think differently. I was not going to be my mother. And so I'm going to have very strict self discipline and self
Mm-hmm.
commitment.
You took matters in your own hands, saying like, I am,
Yes,
it's an oath to myself. I'm not going to be my mother.
exactly.
And then that kind of anchored you to focus on what you said, dream big. And you weren't going to let circumstance define you. You're like, I'm going to find a way. As far as I want to do this, I'm clear I want to do this. I'm going to make it happen.
I'm going to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would lay in my parents' compound and look up the sky and I would say, I'm going to be that one big, big star. And
Mm-hmm.
I started laughing at myself. But then to me, it was real. It was real.
Yeah.
Where I came from was not going to define who I was going to be.
Right. That was really big for you.
Yeah. There were a couple of arranged marriages that I escaped from.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would vow to kill me if he found me because he wasted all his resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working when I was 14 years old. I started my business of import and export at the same age, right when I was hitting 15. And that I would sell it to come to college at USIU, United States International University
Mm-hmm.
here in Nairobi. And that was the biggest accomplishment of my life.
Because you did it. Well, you created that opportunity for yourself, right? Because you said
Yeah,
girls were not
yeah,
prioritized for education. Those opportunities were limited. You came from humble
yes,
beginnings. Your mother was also limited in what she knew to do. She had the kids while she was still just a young
yeah.
teenager herself. So
Mhm.
she didn't have that knowledge of what to do or how to guide you. But
She didn't.
you had that moment where you're like, I'm not going to be her. I'm going to be me. And I know what that is going to look like. And it's going to look very different from what we all know. But I know that's what I want to do.
Yes,
You had that clarity in your mind
yes,
and you made it happen. Because not only did you go to the U.S. International University in Nairobi, but you also found your way all the way to the USA, to
I
Arizona,
did.
right?
Yeah, much thanks to, to Arizona State University because they saw my potential and they invested in me. And I will forever be grateful to them
Right.
because I truly vowed once I was able to gain my education
Mm-hmm.
to dig deep into color, which would eventually become colorism.
Right.
It had become personal.
Right.
And then it started coming home.
Mm-hmm.
And when it started coming home, I was looking at it face to face and it was looking at me,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was simply my life worth purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do something about it for black and brown girls. And until this day, when I speak to youth, when I speak to black and brown girls, and now boys alike who are like, please, like we want to be a part of this program.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It's touching, it's moving,
it is very moving.
and you're catching people's attention, right? Like these young boys, you're catching their attention and they're
Yes.
recognizing, like, oh, women are important,
Yeah.
girls are important. Yeah, girls are my friends. I want to be part of this too. Yeah, let's support each other, right? That changes the morale.
Yes, it does. And we really truly owe it to them. We have the responsibility as mothers, as even fathers, any parent, to help these young people understand the systemic injustices.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to amplify their voices. We have to be able to advocate for them, for
Mm-hmm.
a just society that celebrates different skin tones. We have to be able to help them understand how we evolved as a people,
Mm-hmm.
why we are dressed in different skin tones. We have to make sure that girls and boys alike have access to life because they are also human beings. We are all human beings.
Yeah.
And until we as human race understand that there's no issue that attacks me that does not attack you, does not reflect on you, regardless of any color. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
this is the biggest organ on our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
We all share the same organ that runs our whole body. And just because of color, we cannot be presumed differently.
Absolutely.
And
Mm-hmm.
telling one girl or one boy that they are unworthy because of the color of their skin, the color that they did not choose to be, it's very disheartening. It
Mm-hmm.
really is.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you have really created a space and really taken time to really delve into, okay, how can I make a difference? How can I be the voice of change? What can I do? what control do I have and how can I instill that and influence, right? So that's beautiful.
Yes.
So, Francoise, when people come to see me for therapy, individuals, they're typically in one of three places when we meet. Some people are getting started, meaning maybe they've never been to therapy before, but they know they just want to work on a lot of things, or they want to just start sorting things out. Some people are in the middle. There might be an acute stressor that kind of prompted them to come, and they want to sort out that issue and then see how it relates to the other parts of their life. And some people are looking back, where maybe they're trying to get closure on certain things that they've experienced from their past, or they're looking to move forward in a chapter in their life. So they want to make sure there's no unfinished business going on. So this is typically where people are when I meet them, in one of these three places. So for yourself, in terms of your journey of facing the truth about colorism, or your first encounter when you were exposed to your 6-year-old sister and your 10-year-old cousin in deep sadness of them not being in the skin shade of their choice, of their choosing, and all of the witnessing that you had to bear, what part of the journey would you say that you're in right now? Would you say that you are getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
No, I would say I'm just starting
Just starting.
because the journey is too long. The work is too great. The lives of these young people, mental well-being
Hmm.
is at risk.
Yeah, but this is the journey you're talking about, of these children that you are wanting to make impact for,
Yes.
as you are. But I'm talking about your story, about your journey from where you were in that moment of witnessing, and the impact it had on you personally and your life. Where are you in that space?
I feel like I could look back. However, I leave it every single day, each time I meet another child that is experiencing colorism. I see her in them. I cannot separate myself, my personal story, my personal journey from this work. It's the hardest
Mm,
challenge you can ever give me.
right.
I don't know how to do that.
You
Um,
know, when I'm hearing you say this, I mean, I could be completely off, but what I'm hearing you say is that it's like you want to be looking back, like you think you can, but what happens is you're actually re-triggered every time you encounter a new child, like another child that has gone through some suffering from colorism and is facing that barrier in life. So to me, I mean, I obviously it's your journey, so I cannot be choosing for you, but it sounds like that you're actually in the middle. Perhaps
hmm.
in terms of your work, maybe you're getting started because you're feeling overwhelmed by the large task you feel that's ahead of you. But remember, you don't need to bear the weight of it only on your shoulders. You are going to inspire other people to help take off the load. So it's not going to be just yours. But in terms of that personal journey, that's kind of what I heard. I don't want to influence your choice in any way. That's kind of what I heard, that you're in the
So
middle.
tell me more about, speak more to the middle.
Yeah. Well, like as you said, you haven't been able to separate your personal from your work. And so while there's a part of you that knows you've made progress, and that's from the
Yes.
success of your education and taking things in your own hands and pursuing the initiatives that you've already started, and the work you're doing on a global scale is huge. But I think that personally, because you get you're re-triggered as much as you have been expressing, that's what keeps you right in the thick of it. It's like being re-traumatized every single time.
Yes.
But I don't think you're at the beginning.
Thank you.
But maybe you are. But that's just my feel, right? Like, I mean, my feel means nothing. It's your story. So it's your story,
No,
it's your journey, it's your experience.
I tell you, when I'm in these spaces, for example, and I did a lot of work in the Denver public schools and interviewing these young people, and I will never forget this circle of 12, 7, 8-year olds, 9-year olds, up to like 12-year olds. when the story that stuck up with me, and there were too many of them, I sat on the carpet with them and we just started talking. And at the end, this one girl who was in a corner who didn't want to talk, towards the end, I hugged her and I asked her if she was okay. And she started crying.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Why are you crying, honey?" And she goes, "Well, Miss Francoise, would you come to my school and tell my friends how beautiful I am?
Oh my,
Because they call me a monkey.
oh my
They call
goodness.
me a monkey." And I started right there and started crying with her,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because again, the work, it just goes to show you how much pain, how much impact this issue has on these young people. And so when you think about when she says, "Come and talk to my friends,"
Mm-hmm.
if you even try to unpack that friend aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and then she equates them as friends,
Mm-hmm.
and then she tells you, "They call me a monkey. They don't think I'm beautiful."
Mm-hmm.
When you try to understand that and look at this little girl, 8 year old, where would you see her 10 years from there? You know?
Right. So, all of these experiences are scarring, but it's
Yes.
also important, and this is why I always encourage people to take advantage of getting that therapeutic support. It's one thing to make a change in the community and take a stance and get involved because that helps you feel like you're doing something useful and you're making an impact that you can see and people are gaining and benefiting from it. So there's common humanity element that's there, which helps elevate compassion. But healing yourself comes through dialogue, connecting with yourself, understanding yourself, rebuilding yourself from the core. So that's an important piece for all people to remember to take the time to invest in.
For sure. For
Mm-hmm.
sure. I think you're right. I think you're right. I'm in the middle.
You're in the middle, are you?
Yes, I'm in the middle.
And sometimes things that we think we've worked on, we realize after we encounter something or someone that, oh, maybe there's a little bit more there, unfinished business that I was unaware of
Mm,
that I might need to go back into and take a look at and examine, right? Because if we are affected that much and so personally, it will affect how you impact change as well.
absolutely.
And as much as that is such an empathetic response to be able to sit there and cry with this little person, you know that it's not feasible for you to do that with every child,
Yeah,
right?
you can't.
Right.
You just can't.
It will be debilitating on your body.
Yes.
When doing such important work, it's really important to make sure that you're doing it from a place of fullness. So being able to take care of ourselves first is like vital in order for
I
us
appreciate
to
that.
support the others,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we want to
Yes.
teach these young people as well. That, yes, right now, maybe I could come to your school and I could talk to your friends and I could let them know that you're not a monkey. You don't look like a monkey. And, you're beautiful. But that's the band aid, right?
Yes. It is the bonding.
Right. So it's so interesting how raw conversations shift and turn and where we go. You never really know. So that's really the beauty of the spontaneity of conversations like this. And it's prompting me to get curious about this next piece. So I'm really curious about, in terms of your untold story of colorism and all that you've gone through. How did it affect your mental health? I know you talked a little bit about feeling guilty that you had a skin tone that your sister desired. And you were like, I can't believe I have the thing my sister doesn't. I've betrayed her, although it's not something you could control. How were you affected? What was the impact on your mental well-being?
I think when I look at it from that perspective, I see heightened levels of stress.
Hmm.
I see anxiety.
And what did anxiety look like for you? Like, how did you know you were feeling anxious?
I wanted to fix the problem. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't, her being in that mental state
Mm-hmm.
and remaining there made me feel like I had to do something and it had to be quick. I had to find a quick fix and I couldn't reach it. I was not in control and I didn't have the power and I didn't know how.
So did you feel powerless?
I did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel not only powerless, I feel very useless as a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And as an older sister to her,
Mm-hmm.
I try to convince her that she's not what she thinks she is. I try to convince her that she can be better and she has to think and look ahead of what the future might hold.
Right.
But she was too deep in that space and I did not have the tools
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to lift her out of that space. And so what I did in my focus for education, I had to strive to succeed. It had to be some kind of mission impossible, like
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that there's high level perfectionism involved. There's like, this mission cannot fail. I have to lift us up.
Right.
And so this happens. You might know this in most developing countries, particularly in East Africa. One person makes it, or if you have access to something, you lift your family up. And that was what I was looking at. I was like, I am going to take us out of here and I'm going to put us to a different, to higher grounds. And um, my sister will never feel like that again. And anyone who looks like me who is struggling with what I'm struggling with, being handed the gift of poverty and being a girl, would not have to experience the challenges that I foresaw and experienced when I was growing up. I literally wanted to change the world at age 9.
Right.
Um,
So you had this like built-in ammunition. I'm going to
yes,
change the world. And funny enough, that's what you're doing. Like you literally manifested that.
trying.
Not trying, you're doing. It's already happened. All right, so then tell us, Francoise, what is your key message to the listeners of our show? What do you want them to know?
Oh, I want them to know that colorism is an insidious form of discriminatory act
Mm-hmm.
that favors those of a lighter skin color and discriminates against those who are in a darker skin color.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to blackness, it truly does take a different dimension. It gets nasty. It attacks you mentally, socially, and professionally. It leads to very low self esteem, internalized racism, and feelings of unworthiness
Mm-hmm.
that lead people to enhance and breach their skin color.
Mm-hmm.
And those chemicals are very poisonous. Those chemicals are dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to know that please advocate for equity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Please recognize that we are all one. We are all human beings and we ought to be treated equally the same.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to know that beauty comes from within.
Yeah.
It's not external. And I want them to know that they're beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
truly, just the way they are.
Right. What a beautiful message. And one thing I'm curious about is what would you say was that game changing inspiration that's close to you that reflects your untold story? Like, is there an inspirational quote or a book or an event or a person or something that really spoke to you or sparked something for you or ignited something within you?
Yes. There is an environmentalist woman in Kenya. She's no longer, she passed, unfortunately. Her name was Wangari Maathai. I loved one of her quotes, and it went like, you cannot enslave a mind that knows itself,
Mm,
that values itself. that understands itself.
Wow.
And the reason why that is core or resonates with me is that my number one value is education. And I truly believe that if people were aware, if people would do the research and understand, take the time to understand any given situation, it doesn't have to be colorism. It can be anything. If you can take the time to understand it, it will not hold you back. You can unpack it, you can address it. So when you know of something, it cannot enslave you, you know. That value itself is like when you value your life, when you value yourself, when you value your existence to this world, when you know that this is who you stand for and with in this life, then you cannot compromise or be compromised.
It is a great quote, and I'm so grateful that you shared it. It's very thought provoking, for sure. So tell us, what is a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you'd like to give a shout out to?
I feel like there are too many organizations
Pick
that have
one.
been impacted me. But I will give a big shout out to Caring for Denver Foundation that really saw the mental health piece in this work and decided to invest in the first year of piloting and testing the curriculum aspect of My Skin Global. And so there's so many people that have held my hand along the way. And others who have mentored me and continue to. But it takes one leader who recognizes an issue like this and decides to invest in it.
Right. That's beautiful.
And so I credit Caring for Denver Foundation for investing in the one-year program to pilot and test My Skin Global's mental health or social emotional curriculum in Denver Public Schools.
Wonderful. That's awesome. All right. So how can people connect with you if they would like to? Where are you findable?
People can find me on www.myskingglobal.com.
And we also have a show notes page for you. So actually, even your LinkedIn and Instagram handles are available for people if they want to reach out directly, your email and your website. So that's fantastic. That's awesome. So, Francoise, guess what? Guess what? You've just dared yourself to share. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Francoise, I would just like to say, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude for the deep story shared in this space today. Speaking about the depths of colorism, sharing the deep rawness of how this came to light for you, wanting to help shape the minds of young people across communities globally. Not only is this inspiring, but really humbling for me to witness your story and to hear what you had to endure and witness yourself from that young age of a child. I am truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that we have to tell these stories to impact change, but like I said, it's also truly an honor to be on this platform and to have you be a part of the Voice for Change, because it's going to take all of us to shape future generations.
It's definitely going to be a community effort, that's for sure.
Yes.
So once again, Francoise, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.